Welcome back, everyone, to the Pair Program. I am Tim Winkler here with Mike Gruen. Mike, we talked about a little bit earlier, but we are entering playoff hockey, which is a great time of year. The drama is about to unfold between both our squads matching up in the first series. Are you feeling confident? Are you feeling like you guys maybe are sleeping on us a little bit?
I don't think we're sleeping on you. No, I'm feeling pretty good. President's Trophy, I know there's a lot of people who think that's like a curse, but like if you actually run the numbers, it's not. Feeling pretty good. Whatever. It's the playoffs. It's like
I'd be feeling
everything
pretty good
that's
if I was you too.
What was that?
I'd be feeling good if I was you too. It's playoff hockey. You never know what's going to happen.
Right.
But for the listeners, I'm a big Caps fan. Mike's a big Rangers fan, and by the time everybody listens to this, the series will probably be over. So it doesn't even matter what we're saying. But the reality is, it's always cool because, like, I remember back to our first episode. You're wearing your Rangers jersey, I'm wearing a Caps jersey, so we'll have to do another episode here after the victor is crowned.
There you go.
Do some public shaming, but I'm pumped. We'll see if we can maybe get together for a game.
That'd be great. Yeah,
see something in person.
Definitely.
But cool. So I'm excited for today's episode. It's actually something that we've talked about on a previous episode about fractional, a fractional CTO, but we're going to dive a little deeper into this concept of fractional tech leadership. It's an area that, we at Hatch has seen really kind of take off in popularity in the startup world over the last couple of years here. And so we want to expand on it and build a little bit of awareness for, those listeners that are maybe considering going down that path, or maybe are already down that path and want to maybe learn a little something extra. We've got a couple of excellent guests joining us today. So we've got a couple of folks that have been navigating these waters for some time. And again, what we love about our kind of format is we get to bring on two guests to catch it from a couple of different perspectives. So one of our guests is going to be taking the fractional CTO side. We've got Matt Walnock joining us on that front, and then taking it from the product perspective, we have Dan Maccarone. Guys, thanks both for joining us on the Pair Program.
Thanks, sure. And by the way, I'm ready to walk off the podcast because I'm a Bruins fan. And
oh shit! So all right, let's just air horn this man out of here.
Sucks to be you.
Yeah.
Hey man, we can beat the Leafs, I
think. I'll fill you in on how the playoffs are going on our side, and we'll compare notes. So before we dive in, we go through our traditional first segment, Pair Me Up, where we rattle off a couple of complementary pairings. Mike, you usually tee us off. What do you got for today?
So yeah, today I'm going with tea and cribbage. So cribbage is a great card game. I learned it in college. Enjoy playing it. Play with my wife all the time. We drink tea. They just sort of go together. It's a nice, relaxing way to spend an evening. Yeah, so that's my pairing.
I didn't know you were an 85-year-old woman. This is great.
I mean, have we just met? I think you do.
Yeah, you actually do. I was going to say maybe knitting.
Yeah, I mean, that's you remember when I came to the hockey game, I sat there knitting the entire time.
Yeah, tea and cribbage. Wow, that's epic. I don't even know if I've ever played cribbage before. Have you guys played cribbage before?
I have. When I was 10.
Yeah. Is it like a two-person, just two people could play, or is it multiplayer?
You can play 2, 3, or 4.
Okay. I don't have too many more follow-up questions to ask you. What kind of tea? Are we thinking Earl Grey?
No, I just go, I'm simple. Irish breakfast or something along those lines. English breakfast.
English. I was going to say like with whiskey and tea. Cool. All right, I'll hop in. So I'm gonna go with a food pairing with McDonald's and Krispy Kreme donuts. So this was just recently announced as kind of this partnership between these two fast food goats. In my opinion, I think it's a genius move. But McDonald's is for those that don't know, McDonald's will soon begin offering Krispy Kreme donuts on their menu. I think it rolls out later this year.
Is that because the ice cream is always broken? Is that?
Yeah, that's right. Just coming out like soup. But I grew up.
It's a glaze now that it's a donut. It's a glaze now. Just puts on a donut. It's nice.
That's right. I mean, I grew up on Krispy Kreme donuts. I think they're fantastic. And then I don't eat McDonald's that often, but if I do, there's no doubt I'm going to be adding on a Krispy Kreme donut. So I think it's smart, little pivot on their side. And now that that's out, I've been seeing every other fast food chain kind of offering something else similar. So like Wendy's popped up and they're offering like Cinnabons as their thing. So anyways, that's my pairing. Have you guys, Krispy Kreme, how's that rank? Are you a Boston guy? So are you a Dunkin' through and through?
I am a Boston. I don't eat sweets, so donuts don't really mean much to me, but I do like Dunkin' quite a bit. I like their coffee. My wife thinks it tastes like swill, and we don't go to the same coffee places now.
I've been enjoying the Dunking commercials. I think they're pretty creative.
They're really fun. I agree.
Cool. All right, passing it along. Matt, how about a quick intro and then your pairing?
Yeah, very good. So Matt Walnock, I'm with Longitude 77. We've been working for the last 9 years in a fractional capacity. I've got a partner that works in a fractional capacity with CEOs. I work with the CTOs. Pairing, I mean, the weather's getting warm and things are getting green. I love being outside, so it's hiking and cold beer. And there's a lot of breweries. I live in Northern Virginia, just west of here. There's throw a rock, hit a brewery every 20 yards. So there's plenty of options. But yeah, it tastes better after you've sort of climbed a hill.
Nice.
That's solid. I can totally agree on that. This is Bear Chase? Have you been out to Bear Chase?
I was just there last weekend. Yeah.
Were you?
Yeah.
Did you do Ravens Rock?
We did Ravens Rock 2 weekends ago. We were Sammore Shelter last weekend.
Cool.
We did about the little section of the roller coaster.
Nice. Yeah, my wife and I got married at Bear Chase at the house that's connected to the
very
brewery.
Nice. Yeah, it's beautiful. Mm-hmm.
It is. It's a really really cool brewery. But I agree. It's something about a beer just tastes so much more satisfying after taking on a hike of some sort. But good pairing. All right, Dan, we're testing you here. You're prepared.
I'm prepared. I got this. Yeah. And by the way, Matt, I agree. I love to carry a bunch of beers in my backpack to reach the end of what's called when you get the hike and you have to hike back. You can sit by the lake, have a beer, and then walk back. It's the best. It's the best. Not my pairing, but I'm with you. So Dan Maccarone, I run a company called Charming Robot that has been kind of consulting in product for about the past 14 years, but I've been doing the fractional chief product officer role for about 4.5 years. And kind of still do a lot of agency work on the side. But what I found with the CPO is that it can mean different things to different people, which I'm sure we'll dive into. But my expertise has really been about kind of helping people launch their products and grow them for the first 18 to 24 months as a CPO, and then kind of finding my replacement as I built a team for them. My pairing is champagne and Formula One racing. And the reason they go together for me are my wife and I and another couple of friends of ours, we watch all of the races together, not in person. We Zoom them or FaceTime them. And that when the race kicks off, we pop a bottle of champagne on both sides at every single race. Doesn't matter where it is or what time of day or night it is. And generally it's not a time you want to be awake. But we drink the bottle of champagne over the course of the hour of the race until they pop the champagne at the end of the race. So
nice.
It's a pairing that's like been a big part of that tradition for a while now, and I feel like it fits into this oeuvre that you guys have created.
Nice.
Yeah, that's solid. Yeah, most Formula One, is it a lot of international races?
Yeah, you get a few in North America, like in Austin or Vegas, Montreal. But like the one this weekend is 3 a.m. It's in China, which doesn't work well on the East Coast. But it can be fun sometimes if you have a 3 a.m. total darkness and you're popping a bottle of champagne. It's great.
Is the iconic race I always associate with like kind of like a bouginess? Is that Monaco?
Yeah, Monaco is I think the last race of the year, and it's a cool one. It's in the city. It's not a track. It's like you're racing around Monaco. It's really awesome.
Mm-hmm.
I've never been. Like I'm not bougie enough to go. Yeah.
I was gonna say it's like the A list of celebrities all make it to Monaco.
Yeah, like $20,000 a ticket. Like I'm okay.
Okay.
I can watch it on ESPN. It's totally fine.
Yeah, I like it. Champagne and Formula One. I didn't see that coming. You surprised us.
I zag, man. You know, it's no tea and
I feel like a peasant with McDonald's now. Like, I just feel like I'm a.
I mean, it is nice to see that they're not trying to do health food, like, you know.
Right. Cool. All right. Well, let's transition into the heart of the discussion. So again, you know, we're going to be peeling back the curtain on fractional tech leadership. Some of these areas that we're going to be discussing are, you know, kind of defining what it means to be a fractional CTO or CPO, specifically how each role is maybe aligning engineer and product with key business objectives, breaking down like the key stakeholders that you all are interacting with, and also how you integrate with the existing teams. I'd love to understand a little bit more about, you know, what metrics define success. I know Mike's got a slew of other things here, but and then I'd like to also close with just a little bit of like, you know, let's talk about, you know, what we think the fractional market looks like in 2024 and beyond. So the easiest way to kind of kick this off, I think, is just, you know, starting with both, you know, each of you. Is we'll start with you, Matt, and just from like the fractional CTO point of view, you know, giving us an example or some reasons when and why a founder, you know, loops you in, you or your counterpart.
Yeah, happy to. There's a range of situations, but largely it's to answer the question of why isn't my product what I thought it was going to be. It's a miss in the, you know, the expectation. I work with largely early stage companies. Some of them have just received their funding and they want to, you know, be pointing in the right direction. Others are through it and not sort of necessarily seeing the results they expected. So that they can identify that maybe something's wrong, but the what is actually going on and what is wrong. That's where somebody like myself, having seen a number of teams doing this for the last 9 years, as well as prior experience, can kind of step in and say, all right, let's step back from the whole situation. Let's look at the team and the process and how everything's being decided. And more often than not, it's gaps in that process, either, you know, at the beginning where it's so critical to get requirements well refined and on point, especially when you're in a situation often where the founder is the sort of the anchor and the engineering team may be offshore. You know, that translating the founder vision to that engineering team via those requirements is always critical. So that's usually a gap. And then kind of the other end, the quality, the operation. And usually it's situations where they've made decisions or had leadership that hadn't had the experience or got caught off guard by some things. Or they've had success in a lot of cases. They've had to grow in certain areas and had to leave others behind for the limited resources they've run. But for me, it's largely being able to step in and go, okay, what's missing? What isn't being, you know, fully fulfilled here from a software delivery perspective?
Sure. And we'll dissect that more. Before I kick over to Dan, though, I do have a quick question on are the bulk of the companies or the founders that you're collaborating with, are the bulk of them coming from, you know, more of like a go-to-market background versus a technical background?
Most of the folks that I work with, yes, they're in need of that good technical partner at the beginning, and if they can't be that for themselves, they're often leaning on maybe somebody that can author the code, maybe has run a team, but isn't sort of at that level of business acumen to kind of translate what the business needs into the actions the engineering team needs to take.
Sure. Perfect. And Dan, let's kick it over to you real quick. So, you know, talk to us a little bit more about when and why, you know, you're being brought in to an organization.
Yeah, I think there are two scenarios that tend to work best, at least for me as a CPO. One is, you know, early stage company, pre-product or pre-launch. They really need to. You have a founder who's probably a subject matter expert and really knows the problem they want to solve, but may not know how to translate that into an actual experience. And so for me, it's like coming on board, helping, like listening to them, and then working with them and their CTO, and if they have another, if they have a CRO or someone who's part of it, to kind of translate that into an actual overall like UX and design, and work with the CTO to get it launched, and help evolve that product after launch to see what's working, what's not. Probably also partnering with a marketing person, road person, over the first, 18, 24 months while growing their team. It's really important as part of to me as a fractional CPO, to find the right people who can work full time while I'm not there full time. But the reason they want to hire me is because I bring an expertise with the amount of companies I've helped launch over the past couple of decades to do things faster and quicker and put a process into place that's going to work for them. The other audience is a company. Doesn't even have to be a startup, but usually it's probably a smaller company that exists, but has either gone off the rails or is going off the rails, and really needs to rethink their approach to product and approach to the digital strategy. So coming in there often means a few things, and it's kind of similar to something that you said, Matt. Like, it's reassessing where they're at. What's wrong? What's the problem? What's your North Star? And then it's looking at the team and saying, this is not the fun part, saying, all right, who's right for this company? Who's not? What do you guys need? What's missing? What's your process like? Do you need a new process or a process at all? Which often it's the latter. It's you have nothing going on and you need to get something in there. And then implementing that. And hopefully, you can do that one in like 6 to 8 months. I often find that those are the ones that move faster, but because they have a product that just needs some adjusting, but you still need someone who can come in with an outside eye who's not a consultant. I think that's a really important thing. They're not a consultant. They're part of the team. They're just part of the team that just happens to not work, 40 hours a week, but is doing the work to get that change kind of implemented and get everything on the right track until a new person comes in that can fill that full-time role.
I think that's an important point that was like one of my questions I think a lot of people have is how do you differentiate fractional from other types of, whether it's consulting or contracting type work? I'll let both of you answer. Dan, if you want to take it first.
I mean, yeah, Matt, I'm really curious as you've been doing this for as fractional longer than I have. But the most important thing, or one of the most important things to me, is having buy-in from that kind of C-level or overall C-suite that you are part of the team. And that needs to be communicated to everyone else. If there's not buy-in from the top, it does not work, in my opinion. Because people, I think, if they think you're fractional, think you're not focused on the product. And I've had founders say to me, if you're not thinking about this like 60 hours a day, then you don't really know what it's like to be part of this company. And I'm like, well, that's not true. In fact, I think it's good that I'm not thinking about it 60 hours a day, so that I am thinking about it. Everything else that's kind of contributed to my thoughts is letting me focus on this. But that buy-in is so critical because it is a bit of a controversial space. I mean, Matt, I don't know what you think.
Yeah, I mean, when I meet my clients for the first time starting to get to know their teams, I treat it like I'm onboarding as if I were their full-time CTO. I have to emote that. I have to show the actions I'm taking. I have to kind of start to understand their culture because the timing you described there, Dan, is right on that 6 to 8 month window. But those first 30 days of onboarding and observation, it's not about like immediately coming in and making changes and fixing things. It's getting up next to the team and understand how they operate and how they can be changed and what's safe to lean on and what's not. And that's, to me, is the same as if I was joining them full time. I very quickly get into the mode of saying, we have issues and we have challenges, and the support from the top is, I agree, completely necessary.
And I imagine, too, that the level of transparency that the founding team is having with the rest of the team about what's happening here is pretty essential, right? I could feel like if I was an engineer and, you're coming in and you're asking questions and everything about, processes and just doing that discovery phase. If I wasn't really truly clear that, hey, look, we're bringing in this fractional, resource. I want you to treat him as if, is our CTO, but just knowing like this is a fractional individual. Like, are you coaching them on how they communicate that to the team, or, because you've maybe seen it time and time again, this might be their first engagement with one. So how are you all, I guess this kind of leads into that next question about like that integration with the team and, what steps are being taken to ensure more of this like seamless kind of process flow for you?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. It's really important to get that right. The introduction to the team is once you've got the support from the leadership, The next rate in line is the team willing to work with you? So it's, taking up a non-threatening posture. I'm here to help. We're going to work together closely, and here's what we can achieve together. And it's really sort of selling them as a team that it's worth their time to pay attention to things that I might have to say.
How about on the product side, Dan?
Yeah, I don't know that it has to be communicated as this person is fractional. It can be. I think it's okay to tell people that. But I also think that that if you have the support of leadership, it should be, here's our product lead, and for the most part, you're working remotely at this point, anyways. So I don't devote specific hours to clients. I'm available whenever they need them. I might be working on something else when they ping me, or might be working on for them. But to me, it's about, this is the person who's running this, and I'm building a team or working with a team. And so I don't like to be thought of as someone who may not be available mentally or physically for someone. I think it's more like, I just happen to be paid fractionally. That's how I look at it. I don't know. Actually, Matt, can I ask you, do you think that makes sense, or do you think it's important to communicate the fractional? Sorry, I don't want to hijack your show, guys.
No. This is what we want.
I think it's, I have to. It's more getting into the process with them and sort of showing that I'm going to be a partner to their current leadership, engineering. That might be a director. It might be an architect, a team lead of some sort, because it's just important that there's some instant credibility so we can get to work. And that comes from just me working with that leader. And in a lot of cases, that's just what I'm there to do. It's a one-on-one with that engineering lead. And that's the level of engagement we're at. And then from there, it's me and the team, or, a full interim role where it's more of what Dan's describing, where it's like, okay, you all report to me now. I'm taking the title. I would be labeled interim CTO. Not a lot more communication needed other than the leadership has support when we go to work. But in those cases where we're looking to, keep everybody in place, we're looking to grow and scale and augment this team, then getting a good partner just at that, team leadership level is real important. And for me, Dan, I would just finally say that the sort of the boundaries for me are a little bit, I need to make them more clear, because I run right into operational roles and touching production systems and things like that I need to have bright lines around when I engage.
I was just going to say, I'd imagine too that, for some of these scenarios, there could be an offer to if it's an interim role, if it goes well and you like this as well, you could truly become our full-time CTO. Yeah. So you don't want to kind of spoil that and just kind of maybe just set the stage as if here's our.
I've been asked more than once, but I try to go into these things with no, let's just think of this as the temporary condition that it's going to be, and we're here to make this a better situation for the next person. And I talk more about how the transition will occur and make sure the client understands what the vision is for this, not get used to me doing this part-time for you.
I think that's so important, because I definitely have that same position where people have said to me, so I know you're doing this fractionally right now, but when are you going to be a full-time person? And it's I'm not. That's not what we agreed to. And it can become quite frustrating, because that means they're not thinking about you in the role that they should be. They're thinking about you as someone who is part-time, who is a consultant. And that's clearly, not what Matt's doing, not what I'm doing. And when you start having those questions again and again, you have to ask yourself, is this the right place for me? I don't mean full-time. I mean fractional. If they're asking you to be full-time, it's a compliment in some ways, but it's also guys, you got to know, or people, you got to know, that's not this.
I've worked with clients where we've had to have that conversation. It's we've done the part where we fix the things, and now it's time to move on and get somebody in here, and we need to wind it down.
Matt, you kind of touched on this briefly when you're answering the previous question, but what does the snapshot of the engineering team look like when you're stepping into some of these engagements? You mentioned there might be a head of engineering or a lead engineer or an architect. What's the common thread that you see in terms of what that next hierarchy of a tech individual internal looks like?
Mm-hmm. Generally, small team, and most recently, it's almost always a mix of onshore and outsourced engineers. And The state they're in is usually there's enough process there that it got the attention, it got the funding, and now it's a moment of decision on how to scale it. Is it, bring on more of the outsourced team, hire locally, restructure? Is the architecture going to support it? A lot of questions in the air. And when I can start to offer as a sounding board to that leader and say, here's options, let's talk through options, and give them a space where they're not doing that in front of their team or in front of their boss. And we're hashing it out in the background, building their confidence. And then we help package that up for delivery with the team. That gets us into talking about process. So if you kind of aim right at what do you need to deliver? And that could be based on the product vision. It could be based on the roadmap. It could be contracts that they've written and made customer commits. And this individual's being told, I need to lead this group forward and grow this product. Usually it's in a moment where they've never had to grow at that rate or in that way before.
Dan, how about yourself on the product side? Are you seeing a product team currently in place traditionally, or is there a lack of any sort of a product team?
For an early stage startup, usually there isn't one. Usually I think that like on the product side, you're building a product, you don't need a full-time team on day one. I think that you do over time. And so what I try to do is use my network of design and UX resources to, kind of find the right people to start, get that product built over, let's say, somewhere between 8 to 10, 8 to 12 weeks. And then, because once you launch, you're going to spend some time learning. You can't immediately go into the next sprint because you don't know what's working. So if you had a full-time designer sitting there doing nothing, it's kind of a waste of money. But I do think that as you've planned out your roadmap and you're looking at things, you start to see where you're going to need that full-time designer or full-time UX person or full-time PM, whatever it might be, and you kind of layer them in. And I think by the end of the first year, at that point, you should have a full-time person, at least in design, or at least, if you're head of product, if you're me and you're head of product, maybe you hire a part-time PM or a full-time PM because they can kind of work on the day-to-day, details of things. But by the time I leave, I kind of like to have a full suite of the product team ready to go. At larger companies, or when I come in kind of midway through a company's journey, there usually is, some people on staff, and there's probably a reason I've brought in. And some of them are probably not going to stay, and some of them are. And then it's about building out the right team, filling in the gaps where they exist, and keeping the people who are may have been hampered down before and have all the talent but just weren't able to use it, and so giving them an opportunity to really discover, themselves and get even better at their job. So that's a great thing, is when you find someone who actually has that talent and you get to bring them up a little bit and get them excited about the job again.
I mean, I think that's one of the things that's really different, like at startups between, say, engineering and product, is like in the early days startup, your CEO, the founders, they're the product people, right? And you're probably coming in and really helping them take what that vision and translate it into something. Whereas if you have a technical founder, they're doing the engineering, and now it's sort of helping them on the business side of things. Not so, they sort of understand, they've been through this before. They understand like what a good process looks like, but maybe they've never been responsible for it or whatever else. I imagine that's a big difference. Like with regard to like Matt, you're pairing, you're working with the engineering leader, and maybe in talking, I'm sure, to the CEO or whoever, but you're a little more focused on the team. Whereas I'm sure, Dan, you're probably more working in that gap between the CEO and the engineering team, and they probably have a technical founder or CTO or somebody who you're working pretty closely with.
I think it depends. For me, oftentimes it's helping the founder. And this can be in concert with the CTO, by the way, and it depends on the company. But like, oftentimes I find that if I get to have work with a good CTO, it's the CTO and myself educating the founder more than anything else. And that education isn't education around their vision. Obviously, they have this idea of what problem they're solving. It's about focus. It's about how to prioritize things and how not to try to boil the ocean, and often how not to take right turns and keep on the path that you've set forward before you even get launched. So that's the biggest thing I always find, is you have wonderful founders with great ideas who, hear about something that could make their product even better and immediately want to add that to the roadmap. And you're going to be like, look, that impacts product, that impacts engineering, it probably impacts marketing. Like, yes, let's do that in 6 months, And so those conversations that no one wants to have, but you got to have, are a big part of the job. And it allows, the team, designers, I'm sure it's true on the engineering side too, to get their work done and not get distracted by things that are kind of shiny objects,
Very much so. Yeah. I mean, I often find it's an absence of folks like Dan in the role, and you're asking the engineering lead to stretch themselves all the way to that CEO's vision and bring back something tangible for those engineers to work on. And I've been asked more often than not, what does a product manager do, Matt? And I try to answer that question and try to demonstrate a few things, but there's very much a gap, especially when the founder is a product center, wants to be connected to the customer and the application and feels like they really want to own that. It's difficult sometimes to say, hey, you need a partner to just help you refine that before we can even start building together. So
the other thing that's like, I don't know if you see this, Matt, but like I've noticed this more and more, and maybe it's just as I get older, or let's say I get more experience, maybe is a better way of putting it, is that a lot of people are afraid to say no to a CEO. This is true in big companies and small companies. And I was just working on a project recently where I was approached the Fractional CPO, and I was talking to one of the marketing people, and the CEO had asked for something, and she was like, I got to do that. I'm like, wait, why are we doing this? That makes no sense. And she's like, well, he asked for it. And I was like, it's okay to question it. Like, just because it's an idea doesn't mean it has to happen. And she's like, well, I don't feel comfortable doing that because, I have many of that long, whatever. And I was like, wow, it really, and I've heard this before, and I've seen this before, and I'm like, wow, there really does need to be someone there to kind of help the people who can't say no. Maybe we don't feel comfortable or don't feel like it's appropriate or whatever, but you gotta be able to have that conversation and say, listen, like this needs to be tabled, or this isn't right, or let's have a conversation about this. I'm being negative. I don't mean to be negative, but like,
I mean, I think I found when I was interim VP of product, I've been, whatever. I found my job was more often than not like, yes, but like, and it's back to what I think you were saying before, which is, yeah, that's a great idea. Let's do it in 6 months, or like, here, let me pull out the roadmap and okay, let's work together and figure out where does this actually line up? And then the CEO is always like, I hate when you do this. I'm like, yeah, because we have to prioritize. Like, welcome to the world.
And a lot of times they've been spending those resources in the engineering group without even realizing how much any of it was really costing. Part of this is surfacing just the velocity, the capacity, the dollars going into that, and saying, do you really want to spend those dollars this way, or should we focus on the contracts and customers that are giving us feedback?
I mean, opportunity cost is a huge one that you have to bring up a lot. Like, okay, cool, we can do that, but you do realize that means we're not doing this, and this, and that means this. All the things that come from that.
So I find there's revelation just in kind of putting all that out on the table in front of them and going, here's value, here's cost next to resources, next to the value you're intending to get. And that's with having a partner person, a product person as a partner to do that. It's night and day in the experience.
Yeah.
What's the average, length of engagement, Matt, that you find yourself in? I know it's kind of a broad question, but, you again, like I think we kind of alluded to this earlier, they don't want to be on life support here, fractional life support. So what kind of timelines are you, when you go in and you're scoping something, what are you usually suggesting? What some examples?
It usually will break down something like, that observation period, getting to know them is like a 30-day kind of a window. And then we can move into, planning and fixing. And that is aligned with what Dan said earlier. It's like a 6 to 8 month before you can really have the impact and be changing, what's going on. But a lot of these have just a very long tail on them. I've been with clients that I still talk to for years, and we're in Slack together, and it's more, touch base every quarter type of a scenario. But the, full attention, the sort of interim CTO roles, those are 6 months to a year. And by the time we get to that third quarter, we're both looking at each other going, okay, let's start putting the process together to do the hire.
And from an actual amount of time that you are spending on the engagement itself, is it like heavy in the front end and then it starts to wean down as you get further along in the engagement, or is it just part time, like I don't know, 20 hours a week, or any sort of like or do you not even do hourly and just make it about milestones and deliverables?
No,
I'm curious about that.
I try to do just a monthly retainer. So similar to what Dan was describing earlier, that I can chop up my day how I need to get to everybody. So I do. I mean, I put in a lot of hours, but it's largely based on the style of that engagement. So I'll have like one large one that I'm focused on, and then maybe one or two coaching or mentoring type of arrangements, and then some maintenance stuff with folks that I touch base with much less frequently. In terms of the level of effort over the time, it's like getting on board that observability period. That's kind of nice. We're getting to know everybody, and then it gets busy. Then you're really cranking on the problem space, and you're trying to keep up with a fully running team, not breaking what they're doing while helping them, turn in the right direction and make some positive change.
Those timelines kind of align with you, Dan, and on your side?
Yeah, I try to do like 1 to 2 kind of bigger clients at a time, and then have smaller ones on the side. My timeline generally is I try to do like a 12-month engagement, because I do think that once you start seeing results, like Mark was saying, you can spend a lot of time fixing more things and seeing, what's working, what's not, and hone your strategy. But I think after like 18 months is my max. My max to say, you got to replace me. I do love those clients you're always kind of working with. What I often find is that I'll kind of come back and work on smaller projects with them afterwards, on things that are much more focused, or like little strategy pieces in concert with whoever's running product and marketing. Like I'm not a marketer, but usually marketing involved. But I do, and I love those relationships because they can last for years and years and years. But for that like really heavy lifting piece of it, it's about 12 months to 18. And I think, to Mark's point, or Matt's point, the first 30 days. By the way, the first 30 days is the happiest time, because everyone is like, we're in this together. And then, you start having those harder conversations, and which is not a bad thing. It's like, I think it's quite fun to get into like actual strategy and getting that stuff done. But it is like, it's not all lollipops and milkshakes. It is some real important.
I think you missed an opportunity for
pairing, or tea and cricket.
I was going to go with McDonald's and Krispy Kreme, but it's
quarter pounders and Krispy Kreme.
Yeah, it's not all quarter pounders and Krispy Kremes. By the way, it could have been tea and cricket also. I will say, not cribbage, but either.
I'm curious to know when are these scenarios where you're turning away the engagement, because I think that's helpful maybe to understand, this good personal fit here, this skill set fit. I'd imagine financials have a big part to play into that, but generally curious, like what are some of the immediates that kind of maybe pop up and you're like, this isn't going to be this isn't good for a fractional CTO or fractional product lead.
Red flags for sure. There are a lot of red flags that come up, and it's around, it's around expectations. I always try to get a good sense of what is the vision of this person, not just like what is their vision for their product, but what are their expectations for the next, 6 months, 12 months, and who else they're going to involve in this experience, right? Like, how have they thought about marketing? How have they thought about technology? How have they thought about revenue? That's a big part of what they're doing. Because if they want to, I go back to saying, if they want to boil the ocean and they can't be convinced otherwise, then that's not something I want to be a part of. If they think they know more about technology than they do, then I don't want to be involved with them, because they're not going to listen. And it's how much they actually trust, my experience. And I certainly am not saying that I'm right all the time, because I'm not. But to me, like I believe in the philosophy of trust your generals or lieutenants. Like if like I come to Matt and say, Matt, let's talk about this, and we end up on the same page, and then we go to a CEO, and that CEO has no interest in listening to us because it doesn't align with that person's North Star, even though we've done all the research. And if that happens once, fair enough. But if it happens 6 times, and you can tell this in an early conversation with someone, there's no point in working with that person, because you're never going to be effective, whether you're full-time or not. But to me, if I'm working with 4 or 5 clients, I'd rather work with 4 or 5 clients who are going to listen to what not just me, but like the team I bring to the table, has to offer. And they're generally pretty experienced. And is willing to have that conversation, not again to say that we're going to dictate what the right answer is, but at least to be like, listen to what we're saying. That's my biggest red flag. If they don't want to listen, then I know that it's not right.
I think the way I phrase that just like is the idea of like strong opinions strongly held versus strong opinions loosely held. I'm fine with somebody who's got strong opinions loosely held, right? Like I can change your mind. If you've got strong opinions strongly held, there's just no point in having this conversation.
Right. And I think, oftentimes that happens if like I like to do a little small project with someone first too, to see if there is alignment. And sometimes that's a lot of research. And if I come back with research, with data that says something that either agrees with what they're saying or is slightly off, or maybe totally is like the opportunity is actually over here, and there is no listening to that, that's a big red flag. It's like, you're not going to listen to the data. If you're not listening to data, then what are we here?
Right.
Matt, how about yourself? And maybe also another thing to really add on there is like, the stage of the product's in. When is it too soon for you?
I mean, not to be repetitive, but the receptivity to what you're saying and how you're coming to these conclusions. I mean, it's not, you have to show your work. You have to convince and support and put the data behind it. But if you don't have a receptive audience, you're not going to get very far. Other things that come to the top of the list on the engineering side, I start to look at compliance. I start to look at obligations they've got outstanding and their ability to meet them with the tech they've got deployed. We start to look at how they're handling their data. You start to get into some very sensitive things very quickly, depending on which vertical they're in. And sometimes I've been, revealing things to leadership they didn't know were there, which is an interesting situation to find yourself in. But for the most part, it's all just trying to get transparency to what is being run, how it's being operated in a space where you, the leadership, can see it, start making decisions. So it's just, if you're not able to kind of surface that in a way that they can understand, that's the other thing, is if you're dealing with a non-technical sometimes you really have to put this into a space where you're literally at the whiteboard for a few hours, just breaking it all down and trying to show dependencies between decisions. Can kind of blow their hair back from time to time when you get there. But again, if you can synthesize and here's what we can do about it, which is your real value for being there, then sort of the shoulders come down the street. You can see the stress kind of come off of them. You're like, okay, we can do something about all of this. That's great. Let's go.
What about product stage? Like, I'm just generally curious, like, when are you coming in, or if when's the earliest that you've kind of come into an engagement?
Well, I mean, the absolute earliest was, it was a founder and a developer. I was
they
very
asked you for an idea too.
Yeah, they had some code. They needed some. Yeah, no, but the more typical is, they're in that, early stage money, Series A, maybe. I've worked with a couple of companies that were, 250 to 500 million in revenue, but that's few and far between. Most of them are much, much, much smaller. I like to just get it. And again, when I walk in there, it's not about, I'm here to do a job for you. It's more, I'm here to help you over a period of time in your existence, and what's the right level of attention and detail, and what's the process. So I'll talk to anybody. happy to meet them. And a lot of times it's handing them off to somebody like Dan to say, hey, you don't need me yet. You need somebody like that to kind of get your roadmap put together, get the vision, go figure out if the market is even receptive before you start spending engineering dollars.
How much time do you think you guys are spending educating your prospective client on what fractional means and what they're actually getting? Or by the time you're having, or they've already sought you out and maybe they know what they know what fractional means, and so maybe you're not doing that education? Because I've talked to a lot of different people in the space, and there's varying amounts of education that go from their perspective.
It's a lot up front. I mean, at least for me, I still think that it goes back to people not understanding the difference between a consultant and a fractional person. And even if you explain it to them, I think there's often this skepticism of, but are you really a part of the team? And I work with so many early stage companies that I think that it's not just explaining to them, but it's convincing them and their investors. Their investors are often skeptical that they can't get a good product to the market with someone who's fractional. And, as someone I ran agencies for 16 years where we were doing the exact same thing. We just had a team. We thought of our team as our team as a product team in a box. Even getting investors on board with hiring an agency that could actually get the thing launched faster than trying to hire a team internally was a challenge until we could prove it. We had a portfolio of things and look at all these things we've launched that have actually been successful with our work. But I think the Fractional is the same challenge. It's like you have, but in the end, like, and Matt, I'm sure you've had this experience more than me. It's asking them to have faith into Jeff. Like either they're going to trust the idea or they're not. And there's not so much education as understanding that needs to happen or in faith.
Yeah, I agree with that. It is a lot of upfront education, but I find that once we get started, once there's action being taken, results being shown, that we don't talk about it much anymore. I tend to, from time to time, it does come up in like the hours that we're working. Like I'm not going to be available afternoons in some case, but for the most part, they don't really see me as Fractional once we start working together. And I have to sometimes remind them and go, oh, yeah, I have another client that I'm doing a thing for. I'll see you in a week. And, but yeah, it tends to just fade into the background.
Yeah, I figured. But like at the very beginning, and like when you're first setting up that engagement, the sense I'm getting is that they really don't know what you are doing a lot up front in terms of education on what this role looks like. It's not a well enough known. It's not like, I feel like people understand like a fractional CFO very well. And at this point, like they would seek that out and they wouldn't have in their head, like they wouldn't need to be educated about what that kind of means.
I just try to not keep the label on it for too long and just quickly get to, thank you for introducing me to your team. I'm going to work with this named individual on these sets of things, and your team will see this. And this is the bubble we call fractional CTO for you. And once they can understand what to expect, it goes a long way. And again, the label just sort of goes away. It's now Matt's working with the engineering team and we're going to do good things together.
Awesome.
And to counter that too, I think, this leads into the kind of like the last question on the topic, but they've probably done some research to get referred to you to this point. Mike and I were talking about this, about like, how are you sourcing, new work, right? And I've always seen that it's usually very, very much, it's just a referral network, right? You did something for this person over here. They know another founder over there that's in a similar type of debacle. And they're like, oh, I used Matt. How are you sourcing your opportunities? Or are there other outlets out there that maybe folks aren't privy to? And, you can keep it secret if you want to keep that resource, that little golden nugget to yourself, but I'm curious.
Dan, you want to go?
My whole business, my entire career has been through word of mouth and through referrals. I don't do any marketing or advertising other than stuff like this or my own podcast, but even that is generally like about kind of a layer upon a layer. And so there's always, I would say 95% of the time I have a contextual warm introduction or referral. And I like it that way. I find it so hard to convince someone who's never heard of Fractional or doesn't trust consultants or whatever, again, different things, to persuade them. Even with the kind of portfolio that I have, which I'm very proud of, but that's how I've always done business. I've never done any sort of marketing.
So you don't have like a big LinkedIn campaign reaching out to?
No, God, no. I would, that makes me like want to throw up, like the idea of doing that. And look, people do it. LinkedIn's huge. I don't even like putting job postings on LinkedIn for people I want to hire, because you just get a sea of people, like a fire hose of people so fast. And you're like, well, I can't read through these. So I tend to like use the same thing when I'm looking for someone. I do it in my network and I'm like, who's going to be great at this? And I get 3 or 4 people, and usually one of them is that diamond in the rough you're looking for.
That's been my experience too. It's a lot of warm leads and doing good work for folks, and your name gets around, and you get some, you're walking in with credibility, having done good work for folks. And good.
Have you guys seen an uptick in inbounds in the last year and a half or 2?
A lot more receptivity to it. Yes, I think they've been asked to talk to a lot more folks, been introduced to a lot more companies in the last couple of years. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think it's more that the idea that people are actually considering fractional people versus not. And I certainly think that there are roles that they're considering fractional and roles they're not as well. Like they're like definitely, I see a lot more fractional CMOs than I see CPOs, for example. But I think that just means we're at the beginning of this kind of, for lack of a better word, movement, that not anything else.
I think paired with a pretty drastic change in venture funding, no doubt, and a tighter grasp on budgets has certainly created a wave of things. One, a downtick in hiring up larger engineering teams that maybe you once would have done. Two, more folks offshoring or outsourcing development, and then three, more engagement with consulting or fractional types of resources. I've seen that across the board. I don't know if that's been some of the themes that you all have seen, as you're building your teams, if they're, are they less, maybe it's still too soon, but have you seen a shift of folks maybe wanting to come off of outsourced development or staying on the path of outsourced development because, for financial reasons or anything like that?
I don't think that's changed a lot for the companies that I work with. It's always had an outsourced component. Most of them do. I have seen, interestingly enough, with AI, I get a lot of folks now wanting to have those conversations, even if their product wasn't necessarily pointed in that direction. So we start talking about growing the team. Where do those skill sets come from? But it's much more specialized than it is, I need a front-end developer, back-end developer type of scenario. Yeah.
I mean, on the product side, it's not the same thing. I mean, I still see what you're saying, Matt, which is the outsourced dev team. But when it comes to designing UX, usually it's one person that is somewhere domestic. Doesn't have to be in New York where I am. But we haven't really outsourced that. And I don't think ever really.
Yeah, I've seen a downtick in product roles as far as we used to see a lot more of them. Those product teams kind of being a little bit more trimmed down across some of the, say, Series A, Series B startups. But again, I think there's a lot of that's just an aftermath of overhiring from 2021 and just a different economic time as well. As far as
I think it's also because you have trimmed down engineering teams. I mean, it's one of those things where there's a ratio of the number of people, engineers, and the number of product managers. And if you're trimming down the engineering side, you probably don't need as many product people.
Yeah. Well, you don't need, I think the number of people to make a good product team isn't a lot, especially for a startup, even in a Series A. You just don't need that many designers or UX people or PMs. I mean, as you get bigger, for sure, as you have different verticals, whatever, having PMs, so that makes sense. But you can survive as a startup to a certain extent with one designer, one UX person, maybe not even one full-time UX person for a long time. And when you add that second designer, you better be hoping you have a lot of work for them. It's I mean, the way I was hiring, I'm sure this is not a new idea. It's you want that person to be bursting at the seams so that when you hire that next person, there is that need for that, right? Not that I never want to overwork people. I believe in work-life balance. I actually hate companies that don't. It makes me angry. But I do believe that you need to be smart about hiring and not waste money. And when people are sitting there doing nothing, it's lame for everyone because they get bored too. You don't want your team getting bored.
Yeah, no, I would. You can definitely survive a long time with a very thin product team. You have the right senior engineers in place. They can do a lot of that translation. They take on a lot of ownership. I totally agree. Some of the worst places I've worked have way too many product people and not enough engineers. Just we spend a lot of time talking about the work that we could be doing, or we could do the work.
The worst.
Cool. Well, I know we've got a couple of minutes left. So, Mike, anything else you wanted to add?
That's right.
Yeah, I think we covered quite a bit. That was really, really informative and really helpful stuff. So appreciate you guys shedding light on it. Let's transition to our final segment, the 5-second scramble. So just a quick kind of rapid fire on some Q&A, some business, some personal. Mike, you lead us off with Dan, and then Matt, I'll jump with you.
So
let's do this.
Yeah, let's do it. You ready? All right, here we go. All right. Explain fractional leadership as if I were a 5-year-old.
So, you know how you have a teacher that comes to your school every day and you have to spend time with that teacher? Well, imagine if that teacher had to teach multiple students at once, but it was individually. So teach you, they teach your friend, they teach your other friend, but they're going to spend 3 hours a day with each of you. But every single day you get to spend time with that teacher and ask them anything you want, and you get their full attention for that time period, and the next day and the next day. That's what I do, but with companies.
That's awesome. Although I don't think you get 3 hours because there's 30 kids in the class, but.
Well, it's a private Montessori school. I don't tell you. Fractional ain't cheap, man.
What's your favorite stage company to work with?
Early stage. I love pre-product to taking an idea from nothing and bringing it to something.
What's the biggest challenge, or what do you think is the biggest challenge facing tech exec leaders in 2024?
In general, tech exec leaders?
Yeah.
I think it's marrying the vision you're trying to create to an actual product that's going to resonate with users, because there's so much out there right now overwhelming people with tech. And I don't care what industry it is. If you look at AI as just one example, like everyone's launching an AI company. So why does yours matter? And I think the question that someone always has to ask is, why does this matter? What am I solving? And why does someone want to use this versus something else? And every leader needs to be asking themselves that question. Otherwise, they shouldn't be doing the job.
Absolutely. What's the best piece of advice you've ever been given?
Best piece of advice I've ever been given is, it might sound silly, but is this the hill you want to die on? Meaning, what fights do you feel are worth fighting, and what fights are not? Because we have them every single day, and it's made me smarter about how I approach conversations, and where I will fight, and I will fight for things, and where it's like, you know what, let's just let this go.
Nice. What book should every entrepreneur read?
Mine.
Go ahead, plug it.
Yeah, shameless plug.
I'll give you two, actually. So my book is called The Partial MBA. It's on Audible. It's about how running bars and running startups are parallel, and all the mistakes I've made in bars much faster. But I actually think that there are a couple of things. Rework is a fantastic book that everyone should read. And if you're in the startup real world, you should read Venture Deals to understand how venture capital works. I mean, those two, I think. And the last one I would say is Don't Make Me Think, which I think is really important for anyone who brand and in UX.
Awesome. All right. Would you rather be able to run 300 miles an hour or fly 3 miles per hour?
Well, I guess from a carbon footprint standpoint, I should probably rather run faster like the Flash than fly for a ridiculously stupid reason.
I mean, this is like a superpower, just personal superpower.
No, I get it. I still feel like I have a carbon footprint. Also,
Mike doesn't care about the environment.
I don't care about the environment.
I'm a runner, so I love running. So I'm going to go with that.
What's the largest land animal you think you could take in a street fight? No weapons, just you and the animal.
A land animal? I mean, the smaller ones are actually pretty scary too. I would say like an emu, maybe a llama. Like a llama.
Llama?
I think that would be pretty good. I got llama, I'd fucking crush it.
I love it.
Destroy it.
Oh, we can cuss on this.
It doesn't matter.
You'd fucking destroy a llama. I'd like to see that.
Yeah. Hang the llama above my mantle and be like, yeah, my hands.
Might be the best answer ever.
Just standing there, eating some grass.
Just cold cocked them.
Got it. Yeah.
All right. So what happened to your sketch comedy career?
Good question. We went off Broadway, had an off-Broadway show that led to a pilot that we shot. And by the time we shot the pilot, we were 5 of us. We were writing, producing, directing, everything. And we really burnt out. And I actually, at the time, had just launched Hulu and was redesigning the Wall Street Journal. And I had to make a choice in my career. Am I going to go down the comedy career route, which, was fun, but didn't pay me any money or that much money. And I had launched what became a career level launching thing. And I was like, well, I think there'll be another way to do this. And later on, I got to work with SNL, helping them rethink all their digital strategy, which led to the best meeting I've ever had in my life, where Lorne Michaels leaned across the desk to me and said, Dan, what should I do with my show? And as a sketch comedy fan and performer, to have Lorne Michaels ask you that question, like, there's no better thing that could ever happen. And I think I left it exactly where it needed to be.
That's awesome.
Cool.
So what's a charity or corporate philanthropy that's near and dear to you?
Well, in terms of like causes that are important to me, I am a big proponent of things that encourage or are like helping obesity and childhood obesity. So anything I can ever do around that, I tend to do. That's probably my biggest cause.
And last one, if you could live in any fictional universe, which would you choose?
Oh man, that's a really tough one. I mean, this is probably lame, but I probably would go to like Harry Potter, hands down.
All right, awesome.
All the bad shit aside from J.K. Rowling, not like that.
Well, I mean, the downside is you're a muggle, so
you didn't say that I had to be. I could be a wizard. I don't want to be a muggle in a Harry Potter world. That sounds not fun at all.
Just play tea and cribbage all day.
That's right. Exactly.
Perfect.
I could be a wizarding F1 driver. I'll tell you that much. Some butterbeer and.
All right. Well done. Good stuff. All right, Matt, you're up, buddy. Ready?
All right, let's go.
All right. What is your favorite stage of startup to work with?
Early stage. I enjoy the early ideation. Yeah.
What's the biggest pain point facing startup founders in 2024?
Not to parrot too much, but I mean, I would agree with Dan. It's an onslaught of decisions that need to be made now, and competition is claiming all sorts of capabilities they didn't before, and determining what's real and what's not and how to focus is a huge challenge.
What would you say are the top two areas that you add the most value for your customers?
I would say giving them clarity into how their software is being produced, showing them the cost and the utilization of the resources they've put out there, and explaining the tech, being able to kind of translate in both directions for that founder.
Aside from AI, what's an area of tech that you are most excited to see evolve in the next 5 years?
Ooh. Well, it kind of goes hand in hand, but I think, the robots are coming, hopefully, to help.
Aren't you optimistic?
Agriculture, delivery. I know. I like to think maybe they'll grow the food instead of us being the food, but we'll see.
They're coming. If you were going to offshore development, what country would you target?
Oh, that's a great question. It depends somewhat on the culture and the operating model of the client, and largely that's to do with time zones and how we're communicating with each other. But I've worked with great folks all over the globe: Costa Rica, India, Germany, Romania, few in Israel. So it's I've kind of covered the globe.
Cool. What's your airport beverage of choice?
Let's see. Not caffeine. It's usually just straight water. Just trying to keep it easy.
Okay.
Yeah, not too dangerous to travel with.
No, like a alcoholic choice.
No. I've just seen that go south for too many people too often. I don't even want to bother with it.
It sounds like a story for another day.
No, it's about it. Maybe a Tylenol PM. That's about it.
What is a charity or corporate philanthropy that's near and dear to you?
I work with donate to food banks here locally in Prince William County and DC. I think just food security for people is just critical. Can't operate without it. I mean, second, housing comes right after that, but I focus on food.
Nice. If you could have dinner with any tech icon, past or present, who would it be with?
Oh, wow. Not really. I'm going to change the question just slightly, but I would love to meet Nikola Tesla. I would have loved to just hang out with that guy for a while.
I feel like he's a tech icon. I
just get up to Wycliffe and be part of that experience for the time he was there. That would have been cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's cool. Good answer.
Good answer.
What is the worst fashion trend that you've ever followed?
Oh man. Do you remember Jams? You're too young for any of that. I'm the oldest one here.
I know what they are. I think you're giving me credit, but
I remember them very well, unfortunately.
Well, I mean, we're into nostalgia. We're into making 80s movies. So imagine like how we now caricature the 80s into these brightly neon colors and patterns and everything. And you're making below the knee shorts.
Yeah.
Sort of high print cargo fashion. it was a rough childhood.
That's great. All right. Last question. What was your dream job as a kid?
Oh, it's kind of a funny story. I was tasked in middle school with writing what are you going to do when you grow up? And I wrote a very detailed 3-page paper about how I was going to graduate from college and go to work for IBM and write software. And I was going to have a career doing it. And I graduated from Penn State and I went to North Carolina and I worked for IBM for not my entire career, but for the first handful of years there. So
wow,
kind of was one of the fortunate ones that knew what I was after pretty early. I just fell in love with software development, writing code, used to copy it out of the back of the magazines. So it hit me early.
Called your shot.
Nice.
Yeah. Solid. Cool. All right. That's a wrap, guys. Thank you both so much for spending time with us and sharing your knowledge in the fractional leadership space. It's been an awesome episode and thanks for joining us on the pod.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you, guys.